everybody, this is our 2018 Land Rover Discovery 5, and granted, these Land Rover Discovery 5s look a little bit like a mom car. They lost the squared off-road look of the old ones, but they should still be true four-wheel drives underneath the skin. So in today's video, we're gonna swap out these street tires for a set of all-terrain tires, and then we're gonna get it out into the pit and find out, is this vehicle an actually capable four-wheel drive, or is it a little bit of a poser? So what we have here is a set of Falcon Wild Peak AT Trails. Now this is a tire we actually had on an old Range Rover that we owned, and then that's long been sold, and anyway, it's a long story, but we pulled the brand new tires off that Range Rover and the wheels, and we're gonna try swapping out these 21s and these Goodyear All Seasons for a slightly smaller wheel. This is a 20-inch wheel, which means it has a wider sidewall, and if we just kind of park it next to the current Goodyears, you can see it's a little bit bigger, but a lot more aggressive. So this is what we're gonna need for any kind of off-roading.
Nice.
Kate's showing an impressive feat of strength here.
Oh yeah, for sure. Look at that. The rest of these, I definitely didn't pre-loosen. Tommy, now that we've got our Disco 5 on the lift, we can take a look at some of our underbody protection. Up here at the very front, we have what kind of looks like metal, but unfortunately is not. Not sure.
Well, Case, here, I'm gonna give you this little flathead. Let's take this panel off, because one of the things we're noticing is that there's no obvious recovery points on the front of this Discovery, but if I remember right, from way back when we had one of these a long time ago, if you pull these little panels off, there should be an actual toe point underneath that little plastic guy.
Which, if I'm being honest, is a little bit of a clunky process, don't you think?
Yeah.
That you have to pull bodywork off.
That is spectacularly clunky. It's just hidden under this stupid plastic panel. Do you see that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that that's exactly convenient.
No, that is not convenient at all. So we got aluminum skid plates here underneath the engine. That's good. So you can see one here. There's your front diff. This has seen a little bit of...
Seen some action.
Seen some action, Case. Look at that. It's got a pretty good little gash in it. Same thing kind of like right over here. You got a similar gash, but this is good to see. Front suspension design is very, very similar to what you're going to find on the Defender. So you can see your air strut there, and then I think it's a 5-link front suspension. It's pretty intimidating when you look at it, but it looks pretty much identical to what you're going to find in the Defender. And then back here we've got our transfer case, which does have like a crash bar underneath it, but it's a little bit exposed. And then here you've got our fuel tank, and this is good too. These are all steel skids on the fuel tank, so that's good. And then the rear suspension setup, this is pretty much identical to Defender as well, with these huge, chunky, kind of flat pancake lower control arms there. It's all very, 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 very Defender. And then out back, Case mentioned something interesting. You do have a full-size spare, which is good in this case, but it is pretty exposed. So we got this thing up on the lift. We saw the skid plates and the recovery points, and I know that, we were complaining about the recovery points being very hidden. At least they are there, and at least we do have some skid plates, which for what most people consider a family car is pretty good. Now let me walk you through some of the Land Rover Discovery terrain management, or terrain response as Land Rover calls it. So down here we've got this little panel, and this is where all the magic happens. So we are in access height right now. I'm going to go one up to normal height, and then I'm going to push in on this little knob to engage the terrain response. Now you can leave it in auto and let the computer figure it out, or you can manually select one. So I'm going to go over here to the rock mode. That's going to blink, and then it's going to say up here, select low range to activate rock crawl. So to do that, we're going to put the transmission in neutral. Then we're going to go into four-wheel drive low by pushing that button there. Come on. There we go. And then that's going to put the suspension in the raised mode. So now we can go back into drive, and that suspension is going to go up. Now, With the suspension and raise mode, Land Rover says you have something like 11 inches of ground clearance, which is really pretty amazing. And then we have the screen here, which also does some pretty cool stuff. So if I push these little mountain tops on the far right here, I've got a couple of different settings. I've got drive assist, which shows me my various cameras here. This does have a full 360 camera setup. Let me turn the climate control off here. I've got low traction launch, which will help get us unstuck out of tricky situations. Or I have off-road information, and this is the coolest page. So here we can see suspension position, what the center differential is up to. We can see our different positionings here. We can also see our tilt and angles, a compass, and then some of the information surrounding what mode we are in there. So I'm gonna stick it there in that setting. It also displays up here. And now we can tackle some off-road terrain. Now this is the Onyx OffRoad Andre's Pit course. And Onyx OffRoad, the #1 go-to off-road trail navigation software we always use, now with cell layering. This is a really cool feature that Onyx offers, where it'll actually show you when you're going to return back into cell service, so you know if you have a problem, where you can go to call for help. So it's a really cool feature, the cell layering service that Onyx OffRoad is offering now, and you can use the link below to receive a discount for TFL Off-Road viewers, which I really appreciate you guys doing. Now look, I know I've been a little negative in the past toward the Discovery 5. It's not that I don't like these cars. I'm a huge Land Rover fan. It's just, it's hard to get past this design, which is just a little bubbly and weird, especially coming out of the LR4, which was so squared off and just butch looking. This 5 is a very, very different look. And I just much prefer the LR3 and LR4 and Discovery 2 looks, but this does have a very similar four-wheel drive system to the LR4, and some would say even better. Now this car, as far as I know, I don't know the window sticker, does not have the locking rear diff, which would be very cool. But what you're going to find in all these more modern Land Rover products is you simply do not need them. The way that these vehicles can tackle off-road terrain with open diffs and just their traction control is unbelievable. So right now, I'm going through this trenches course here, and we are going to take it really slow, make it as hard as possible, and you can see as soon as the tire starts to lift, the brakes clamp down, and in my opinion, it's just simply the best four-wheel drive realistically on the market. And it's actually doing a pretty good job of articulating as well with the cross-linked air suspension. What that does is it kind of simulates a solid axle. It forces one wheel up and the other one wheel down to try to maintain contact with the ground. And you could see, like it was nothing, we just absolutely walked up the trenches course. And this isn't an independent suspension luxury vehicle, which is pretty unbelievable what this thing can do. So that was a breeze, and with these tires, we didn't see any kind of slip. We didn't have any issue there. It just crawled up the trenches course like it was nothing. So now I want to try the rock course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back on up, and we're going to tackle these rocks that we've built into the ground, and then we'll see what the traction's like. We're fully aired up, so this is going to be just an initial test at street pressure, and then the plan is next week we're actually going to bring this thing to Moab, Utah. This diesel too, kind of an interesting engine option, 255 horsepower, I believe, but over 400 pound-feet of torque. And in low range, it has so much low-end grunt. It feels a lot like the Eco Diesel that you would find in the older Jeep Gladiators. But you can see you can kind of just idle up, even some fairly difficult obstacles. So I'm gonna start crawling our way up, see if these aluminum skid plates are gonna protect the important bits. And so far, isn't even struggling. That center diff is automatically locked up. God, it really does behave a lot like a new Defender off-road. So if you want most of the Land Rover Defender capability, but for $21,000 in this case, a Discovery 5 is largely the same platform with largely the same four-wheel drive system and the same off-road tech, but for a lot less money. You know, actually, got some stuff moving around in the trunk, in the back seat there, but really not bad. It's actually really pretty comfortable. That's where that air suspension comes into play. And usually when you jack up most vehicles to their highest setting with the air suspension, you basically end up topping out the suspension where it gets really, really firm. But with this Land Rover, it actually feels like we still have some travel left. And now we're going to try Lava Lane, which is our approach and departure test here. See if we end up tearing off that low mounted spare tire back there. So here goes the approach angle. So far, so good. Let's see if we scrape the departure. Okay. You know, actually, I thought for sure we'd be burying that plastic into the sand, but no concerns whatsoever. Just idled through that like it was nothing. All right, growing on me, guys. This thing is growing on me. It's I didn't like it at first because I didn't like the looks, but it's proving itself to be pretty capable. Well, Case, it may be a little weird looking, but it still did all the stuff a Land Rover needs to do.
And that's all that we really care about.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So I gotta say, with a set of Falcon tires on this thing and then jack up the air suspension, I really think that there's a lot more we have to explore with the capability of this Discovery, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And as always, this has been Tommy behind the camera case. Head over to alltfl.com where we got more Land Rover Discovery videos coming for you soon.